Okay, looks like we're right on time at 10 o'clock here, so we'll get started right away. Thanks everybody for taking time out of your social distancing schedules to join us this morning for our quarterly cybersecurity webinar. Today we're going to talk about cybersecurity concerns for the Roaring '20s. So as we move into the new decade, which has come in with a bit of a bang here, we'll talk about cybersecurity issues and what we see coming up in the future that we're going to be facing in the next decade. For those of you not familiar with us, just quick fast facts on BPM. We are a Bay Area-based accounting firm with a number of adjunct services, such as the one my team performs in information security penetration testing. And we work with all kinds of different businesses, from nonprofits and governments and utilities and law enforcement to life sciences, financial services, technology, and so forth. And so many of you fit into one of these industries or another, and we'll talk about those today. Myself, a little background on myself. I'm David Trepp. I lead the IT information security assessment team here at BPM. So basically what we do is we test the security of information systems, and that's our job. It's really sort of an audit function, so similar to the accounting audit functions performed by many of my peers at BPM, except our case, it's a rather technical version of that. I am a U.S. Army veteran, and so I think about defense. It's part of my mindset. I've trained as a chemist, a scientist, and so I'm much more comfortable with questions that can't be answered than I am comfortable with answers that cannot be questioned. So I seek facts to determine results rather than the other way around. I've been a tech entrepreneur for 30 plus years now. For almost 20 years, I built information systems. Now that I'm old and lazy, I break information systems for a living, which is much easier than building them. And my personal interests are putting my risk assessment and risk management skills to work and things like rock climbing and bicycle touring. And I also have a lot of personal interest in information science, which comes from my background as a thermodynamicist, and recently, about 10 years ago, realized that thermodynamics is merely a special case of information science, and so key personal interest of mine. So that's our background for the speaker. For today's presentation, we are going to look in our crystal ball a little bit at the future, but I'm not a futurist. I don't spend a lot of time paying attention to the future. I'm much more focused on practicing the current state of the union and what's going on today. So we're not going to talk about the future in any broad, arm-waving kind of fashion. We're not going to talk about fusion reactors or expeditions to Mars or flying cars or anything like that. I do track cybersecurity trends, though, so I pay attention to what's going on in the world of cybersecurity, and that means that I have some understanding of both near and longer-term trends. Today, we're going to talk about some technical topics, but I'm going to try to present them with as little techno-babble as is absolutely required to get the point across. So we will have a little bit of technical conversation today. So for that housekeeping bullet there, please don't hesitate to speak up with questions and comments. We want to encourage questions. I may start using acronyms or technical terms that you don't understand. Please do not hesitate to use the chat channel there that our web meeting service provides, and drop me a chat. I'll try to pay attention to that as we move forward here, and note any questions that you have. I'm not working from a script this morning, so you're not going to interrupt my flow. Don't worry about that. Don't hesitate to holler out. So for today's presentation, we're just going to have three basic sections. We're going to begin with a very brief review of threat sources. For any of you who've attended previous quarterly cybersecurity webinars, we've spent some time discussing threat sources. So today we're not going to rehash all of that. We're just going to do a very brief overview. And then we'll talk about what I consider to be, at least standing here today on March 24th of 2020, to be the top 10 or so cybersecurity threats for the roaring 20s. And then we'll wrap up with some safe computing tips that will, again, try not to be too technical with our recommendations for computing tips, but we are talking about technical issues. So we'll get down into the weeds just a little bit on some safe computing tips. So to begin with a brief review of threat sources, who's out there to get us? What are their motivations and their goals? Here is a chart. Some of you who've attended previous webinars may have seen an earlier version of this. This chart just lists on the left-hand column there the four primary populations of threat sources who are out there. So first of all, we have hacktivists. These are folks interested in perpetrating some form of digital vigilante justice. Maybe you've offended their morality or their political views and they want to exact some revenge for that. You can see some examples of some well-known or somewhat more famous hacktivist attacks. The next category there, foreign nation-state sponsored entities. We are in the midst of cyber warfare. For those of you who don't believe that, we feel free to have a conversation offline about it. From my view, where I stand, it's pretty self-apparent. And the examples that you see there are pretty good sort of smattering of examples of foreign nation-state sponsored entity attacks. You'll notice the first one there in 2010, the Stuxnet attack on Iranian uranium centrifuges. That attack was perpetrated by the United States. So we have the privilege of living in the country that is responsible for the first well-documented ever nation-state sponsored act of cyber warfare, and many have followed since then. Cyber criminals, that's what we mostly spend our time worrying about in terms of threat sources. These are, of course, of folks who want to monetize cyber attacks and make a living off of them. And so they are very, very common, and you can see plenty of examples there that we've all read about in the headlines, from Target to eBay to Uber, and plenty of others. There's all kinds of ways to monetize attacks for cyber criminals, from just flat out extortion when it comes to something like ransomware, to identity theft, to actually intellectual property theft or tampering records and changing the integrity of the data that we possess and handle. And then last and definitely not least is the threat source population of employees, vendors, and contractors. These threat sources may be intentionally malicious, or they may just be negligent or poorly trained. In either case, they represent a threat to the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of our information systems. So they are an important threat source. In San Francisco area, there, the top example there, 2008 San Francisco employee locked out the network after having been fired or quitting. I don't quite remember now. It's a very famous example of an employee who had a retaliatory motive and decided just to lock out systems and then refused to reveal the password until he was arrested. So those are our threat sources, and as we deal with current events here, I thought I'd throw in this little meme here. Many hackers already practice social isolation. As a former chemist, in my time in social isolation here recently, this meme really rings true. I do have a bath of dilute oxalic acid at home right now, reducing some oxidized iron on some quartz crystals I harvested a little while ago. And so when someone posted this meme, I thought, yeah, that's exactly what us chemists do during social isolation times. And the truth of the matter is it's also true for hackers. Hackers are busy. They're not stopping. They continue to perpetrate attacks and indeed maybe even accelerate them as many IT teams are working remotely or themselves taking time off. Things like patching and updating and providing all of the latest security controls become more and more difficult for IT teams, and so that creates a window of opportunity for hackers. So the threat landscape continues to worsen, especially in a pandemic environment. It's really scary out there right now. You see the headline at the bottom of this slide. Last Sunday, the U.S. Health and Human Services suffered a very committed cyber attack against their systems. They were actually able to weather it fairly well, at least initially, but this is just a harbinger of things to come, and there are a number of other headlines we'll be looking at clips of here as we move forward. As we see these threat sources that we're talking about opportunistically taking advantage of the lull in business to perpetrate additional attacks. So that's really it for our very brief review of threat sources and the threat landscape right now. For any of you who would like a more detailed review of that, we can go back to an earlier presentation and be happy to share that with you and replay that for you. For now, let's move on to the top threats of the Roaring '20s as I see them today. So I tried to boil it down to the top 10 and keep it manageable here. So we're going to look at some examples and talk a little bit about Ransomware 2.0, and I'm referring to these as version 2.0 as they're sort of next generation versions of ransomware and what people are doing right now. The same for phishing. Version 2.0, as phishing becomes more sophisticated, moves out of the realm of just email-based attacks. We're referring to that as phishing 2.0. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it this morning, but attacks against critical infrastructure are going to be a big part of this decade as critical infrastructure is important to the functioning of our economy and society, and attacks against critical infrastructure are key aspects of cyber warfare. Expanded tax fraud. We've got all kinds of new venues of attack for tax fraud, and we'll talk about a couple of those. There are some interesting ways that attackers have contrived to defeat multi-factor or two-factor authentication, and that's when you use, a little fob device or your phone to get a little one-time code to augment your username and password. And of course, attackers are devising ways to defeat that, so we'll talk about that. Cloud and cross-boundary attacks. Our information systems are more interconnected than ever. They're storing data in the cloud, on the internet. We're communicating with third parties, support vendors, suppliers, things like that, and cross-boundary attacks across those boundaries between someone else's information systems and our information systems provide a distinct increase in the attack surface area that our systems present to the world, and as a result, attackers are taking advantage of that. We're going to talk briefly about how drones influence cybersecurity and can be used for attacks. We titled that one The Drone Wars. And then there are a lot of ways that artificial intelligence is going to influence cybersecurity in the 2020s. I'm going to stick to just one targeted topic, and that is artificial intelligence-aided deep fakes and how they're used in attacks. And then related to that are other attacks on truth and confidence in our institutions. We'll look at that. And then lastly, we'll wrap up with a not too technical look at the obsolescence of modern encryption routines as brought about by the advent of quantum computing. So we won't get too technical about that very technical area, but we'll take a quick look at it. So there it is. There's the list, what I consider to be the top cybersecurity threats for the Roaring 20s. So let's just run through some examples, some screenshots, some headlines, and so forth, describing these threats, starting with ransomware 2.0. So the original ransomware was very straightforward, typically sent via email attack through a malicious attachment or maybe a malicious link that attacks your browser. Ransomware traditionally has sought out the ability to encrypt your systems and then extort you to pay them money for the decryption key. Now, we're not going to talk about how asymmetric encryption works. We can take that offline if you have some questions about that, how that works. But suffice it to say, unless you pay the ransomware attacker for that decryption key, you are going to be faced with encrypted systems that may be difficult or impossible to decrypt. But as we move into ransomware 2.0, things are shifting and changing. We're seeing a lot of mobile device-enabled ransomware as people move away from the office, and ransomware that targets Android and iOS phones. Ransomware that works when everyone else is asleep. We know of a couple of recent examples of ransomware that may get executed by an employee who opens an attachment on Monday morning when they come to the office, but that payload doesn't execute until the next weekend, until Sunday morning at 1 a.m. when no one is around, IT's not there, people are not sitting at the console looking for intrusion detection alerts or reading the emails that pop up when those alerts get triggered, so that the ransomware has time to propagate around the network, thereby really bringing it to its knees before anyone is able to respond, thereby, of course, maximizing the effectiveness of the ransomware. And ransomware is not just a denial of service attack anymore. So it's not just intended to encrypt your systems and then extort you for payment. It's there to harvest sensitive data. It's there to modify data, to steal secrets, things like that. And ransomware 2.0 has reached the stage where you no longer have to be a master hacker to perpetrate a ransomware attack. What you see at the bottom of the screen here is a little screenshot from the dark web of somebody selling ransomware as a service to buyers. So you don't have to be a ninja level hacker. You can just go purchase a ransomware package and execute it, whether it's against your boss's hard drive on your way out the door, or whether it's against an entire organization to extort them. It is now simply a service that one can purchase, just like you would buy any other piece of software. In this case, though, it's a piece of attack software that can be used against you. So that's really the evolution of ransomware. Here's a very traditional ransomware message that may pop up on your screen or show up as a text file that says your network has been encrypted and now you're being held hostage. So reach out to me over my Proton mail address and we'll talk about how much it's going to cost you in Bitcoin in order to get your systems decrypted. And as we move into ransomware 2.0, we're really seeing a lot of headlines that are pretty scary, and most of these are very recent. I've pulled all of these from recent articles. Here in the top left, we see suppliers to organizations like Boeing and Tesla. If the supply chain is interrupted, and that's as good as interrupting Boeing's work itself, if you can interrupt one of their suppliers. Here on the right, we see a lot of context, a headline about context-aware based ransomware, where there's a lot of targeted context around the message, and we'll look at that a little bit more in our Phishing 2.0 examples. Here in the center left, we see a police forensics firm that was hit by cyber attacks. And then in the bottom there, of course, opportunistic, timely attacks against healthcare organizations in the midst of a pandemic are the worst kind of attacks. Not only do they cause the healthcare organization to have to pay a lot of money, but of course, in a pandemic environment, people can die if the hospital systems are down during the course of a ransomware attack. And so just some examples of what we see in the sort of modern evolution of ransomware. Similarly, for phishing, we're seeing the evolution of phishing attacks to what we call Phishing 2.0. So we've seen a lot of phishing attacks. We've all seen lots of examples of them. We did a lot of them in my phishing webinar a couple quarters ago. We'll look at a couple more examples this morning. But as Phishing 2.0 starts to evolve, we're going to see much more targeted attacks. So there's going to be a lot of prior reconnaissance to come up with really timely topics and name drops. People are going to provide us with assurances that this is all good, you can trust me. They're going to be multi-staged attacks that aren't just going to be an email alone, but maybe an email followed by a phone call that says, hey, did you get my important email from yesterday? Don't ignore that, and really try to get you in any way they can to click on that link or open that file. Of course, we're going to see phishing attacks that take advantage of current events. And again, when we talk about Phishing 2.0, we're really not just talking about traditional phishing anymore, which is to say via email. We're also talking about vishing or voice-based attacks, or smishing, which is vernacular for text-based attacks. And all of these together, even in-person social engineering attacks, may take on a phishing type veneer. So here's a wonderful little example I got in my inbox not long ago from a trusted source. I love this little banner here. Look, from a trusted source. What could possibly be wrong with this email? It says it's from a trusted source. So what could be wrong with it? All I got to do is review my quarantine messages, which are very, very important messages from irs.gov. Of course, these are not quarantine messages. If one hovers over this link, one quickly finds that it's going to an undesirable destination. But this little banner here that says, I'm from a trusted source, is very compelling at first glance. And you want to pay attention to banners like that. Just because someone says you can trust me doesn't mean you can trust them. And that's doubly true for email. Here's one that came in to a mailbox from James Wallace. Now, Jim Wallace happens to be the CEO of BPM. And so BPM employees were hit with this email, allegedly from the CEO, saying, hey, I'm busy. I need you to take care of a task for me, and I need you to take care of it right away. And look, I'm busy. I don't have signature blocks or anything. This was sent from my wireless phone. Just get on it. So reply back to me, and we'll get you started on that task. This was one that went across our organization. And again, the CEO needs you. you may be compelled to try to do something about that. So pay attention to those attacks. Here we see a very common type of phishing 2.0 attack, and that is attacks against human resources. So here we see someone named Shona Dick's resume. Okay, this is a Word document, all right, but it's a Word document that has malicious payload embedded in it. And if one were to open this document and enable content, click on the little enable content box, it's game over. And your HR department has just been phished. And who knows what the ramifications might be of that one in the long run. But this is a very common attack against HR departments. HR departments are used to getting attachments in their emails all day long. So you need to have strong email filtering controls. You need to have strong training for your employees to recognize this, and a lot of HR departments have moved to kind of a sandbox type of computer where inbound emails addressed to HR drop into a computer that is otherwise isolated from the network so that they can open these attachments, and if these attachments prove to be malicious, the impact is limited. So very common attacks in Phishing 2.0 against human resource departments. Here's one purporting to be from the bank. Of course, it says it's from Wells Fargo, but when you look at the email address, you see it's actually from somebody in LinkedIn. But here they're saying that your personal security key, whatever that may be, for your Wells Fargo account has expired. And as a result, it's no longer valid. So let's just click on this link here that says it's Wells Fargo's keys, but if you actually look closely here, you'll see it's going to cabinetkignima.com, whoever the heck that is. Whoever that is, it's not Wells Fargo. And they're going to ask you to log in and just give them a little PII, maybe your credentials, and they'll get that expired key all updated and reissued for you, and everything will be great. And here's one targeting tech firms. This is kind of not necessarily Phishing 2.0. This is sort of an older one. Here we see someone who's come up with a domain name called princetonedu.net, pretending to be from Princeton, and they'd like to buy some toner cartridges and some drives and whatever other technical gadgets they may need. And doesn't that look enticing? Great chance to sell a lot of stuff. And then here's an example of an attack targeting CPA firms. We're going to talk about tax fraud here, other forms of tax fraud here very soon, but here's a perfect phishing example of that. Here is Nathan from Construction and Maintenance Service Company giving me my tax pre-documents. Again, this is a PDF file embedded with a malicious payload, but accountants are very used to receiving emails that have attachments from their clients. Just because they don't recognize you right away, they get so many, particularly this time of year, that the autonomic response to just double click on that attachment is very strong, and so phishers are taking advantage of that. And then for our last examples here, exploiting current events. You've all probably already received some of these types of emails. Here in the top left, we see something that's allegedly from the CDC. Somebody's come up with state.gov as an email domain. That's not the CDC. And here's all the information you need to secure yourself against the coronavirus. Just click on this malicious link. And then here in the lower right, same sort of thing, sort of a briefer email sent to somebody named John, or from somebody named John, with, again, a link here to the COVID-19 FAQ, frequently asked questions, and of course that is a malicious destination. So again, when we're talking about Phishing 2.0, we're not just talking about email anymore. Voice and text attacks are also there. Here in the lower left, we see an attack that went around a couple months ago that is really, really malicious in that it starts with a text that says, someone you know was involved in a car accident. That's a terrible way to tug on somebody's heartstrings and get them to reply. And so, of course, then you reply to that phone number and they say, oh, yeah, there was a bad accident and your loved one was involved, and it's going to cost you some money to get out of this bind and get them the help they need. But I'll accept a gift card, and always beware of somebody asking for a gift card in form of payment. Whenever someone says, "Send me a gift card" as a form of payment, that is almost certainly fraud. And then in the right there, here we see a text message from allegedly from FedEx saying, here's the tracking code on the package you've been waiting for. Just click on this harmless little link here, right? And what they're going to do on that link is they're going to ask you for some PII so that the package can be properly delivered. We see, I don't have a good screenshot here, but the third bullet down there, customer service. This is one that you want to be aware of when you need to vent and dump on somebody in Yelp or Google reviews. What we see are attacks happening now where someone will actually call you on the phone and say, yeah, hey, I'm a customer service person from Acme Company, and I saw that you posted an unhappy review on Yelp there. Would like to hear about your situation. Please tell me what went wrong. And they'll give you a chance to vent and dump on them a little bit, and they'll say, you know what, for your trouble, I'm going to go ahead and send you a gift certificate. Why don't you just give me a little personally identifiable information so that I can get that gift certificate to you? And of course, no gift certificate is ever going to arrive. They're just phishing for PII. So voice and text attacks, and of course, exploiting current events via text. Here you go. Here, Anna, comes your $1,000 from the government. All you got to do is click on this link to claim your money. It wasn't that quick and easy. Isn't the government suddenly efficient and fast? So these attacks are really malicious when we're living in a pandemic environment and sort of opportunistically taking advantage of that. But that's the world we're living in and what we all face. So when we look at Phishing 2.0, targeting organizations, expect your organization to have much more sophisticated attacks than just some of the simple examples we saw this morning. Expect attackers to perform detailed reconnaissance where they really do a lot of information gathering. They go look at your annual reports if you're, a publicly traded or a nonprofit. They'll look at press releases. They'll look at postings on tech support forums to see what kinds of systems you have up and running. They'll do a lot of research on LinkedIn and lead sites, calls to receptionists and others in the organization, customer service, help desk, to find out how things are operating, what's the current events, what big upgrades are coming, big changes, so that they can create scripts that are much more targeted and detailed than the kind of generic stuff we were just looking at. They're going to be name drops, relevant topics, things that maybe you've already heard about within the organization that they're playing on, such as, some new phone system's going to get rolled out, or we're going to change our customer resource management system, or whatever the case may be. And again, these attacks are going to be across multimedia, not just email, but email, text, phone, in person, you name it. And the impact is going to be more than just trying to encrypt your systems for a couple of Bitcoin or maybe steal a couple pieces of credit card information. They're really looking to persist, to take up residency on your network and to escalate until they have administrative level privileges to take advantage of. So that's it for Phishing 2.0. On to attacks against critical infrastructure. I'm not going to show a lot of examples here. I don't think a lot of today's attendees work in utilities or law enforcement, so we won't spend a lot of time with examples. But suffice it to say that those organizations that provide electricity, water, sewage, communications, first responders, etc., are going to be under attack in the 2020s. And those attacks are going to really focus on lying dormant. So these attacks aren't going to be just to try to get a couple Bitcoin out of you or harvest a little PII. They're there to deploy a payload, let that payload remain dormant until it gets the go sign in a coordinated attack against multiple critical infrastructure providers, preferably all at the same time, in an effort to bring systems to their knees. And that is an attack vector that we're probably going to see coordinated with physical attacks as well. There are a lot of coordinated attacks that we're going to see out there. I don't have a screenshot of it here because I don't want to show any sensitive information in this presentation, but we recently, in an engagement, hacked an emergency response coordination system that was set up by a large city on the East Coast that involved not only the city themselves, but involved the law enforcement, first responders, healthcare, utilities, transportation people, so that there's a coordinated response to an attack. And what we found is that system was vulnerable. We were able to take advantage of it. And if we were actual terrorists, the first thing we would do is we would crash that system, and then we would perform our terrorist attack, so that when the coordinated response system is supposed to do its job, it's not there, and there is no coordinated response. Expanded tax fraud. We're going to see a lot of this coming up as time goes on. Previous years, we've seen a lot of fraudulent tax returns filed. This year, we're seeing a lot of new variations on that. So attacking the accounting firms themselves, call, email, text, and impersonate a client in order to harvest sensitive information on that client. Or commandeer accounting firm websites, document portals, and mail systems. There are a lot of small accounting firms out there that don't have a lot of money to invest in infrastructure, and they have websites, portals, and mail systems that just aren't that well defended. And it's not that hard for attackers to commandeer them. And if we can commandeer the accounting firm's portals where all their customers upload all their 1099s and W-2s and whatevers, then we can get our hands on those. Attacking the individuals who are doing the filing. Again, the traditional form of tax fraud was to file returns early for high earners. So people who have MD or JD or PhD after their names, we're gonna file for you in early January, and oh, by the way, you got a large refund coming, except it's coming to us, not you. And then, of course, there are lots of people out there who are impersonating valid accounting firms in order to get clients to believe that I'm your CPA and I'm calling you or I'm emailing you or texting you about something in an effort to get you to maybe download a document that's got a malicious payload or click on a link that's going to attack your phone or something like that. And then those firms that distribute key tax documents such as W-2s and 1099s, impersonating these firms to send out emails that maybe have a W-2 or 1099 attached to it, but there's a malicious payload embedded in that attachment. Or maybe I'm going to send you a link that says, click here to go get your 1099. And then I'm going to ask you to log in. I'm going to harvest your credentials, or I'm going to attack your browser when you log in. All those attack techniques and angles are part of what we see to be a vastly expanded tax fraud landscape out there right now. And so for a lot of the services that we use, whether it's with our accountants or for our retirement funds or 401ks or our online banking systems or even for some organizations, our games, we have what's known as multi-factor, MFA or two-factor, 2FA authentication. Again, where we use a fob or a phone in addition to our key, our password and username. And multi-factor authentication is great. It really works well. It's very difficult for attackers to capture your multi-factor authentication in real time. So use it wherever you can. But there are some ways that attackers work around it. So help desk attacks. So if you have multi-factor authentication getting sent to your phone, but I call your bank and convince them that I'm you, and I need to change my phone number for that multi-factor authentication, well then, the next time we go to log in, I'm going to have that 2FA, and it's going to come to my phone instead of yours, and I'm going to be able to take advantage of that. So here we see a picture of one of our folks, Jimmy, with a little mocked-up passport and a little note there with a date on it from last spring saying, you know, hey, help desk person, this is really me. See, please change my phone number. Also, in the age of cloud computing, there are lots of services out there that are sort of back doors to MFA. So many of us access our email over Office 365, which is in and of itself a very secure service. It supports multi-factor authentication. It works really well. But there are some poorly documented back doors, such as Exchange Web Services or traditional Exchange desktops clients that do not then require that MFA. So IT people need to make sure to have those things shut down. There are some cases where attackers will just plain ask the user for their one-time code. So if you ever get a call like this one here that says, we're from the bank security department and there's been some suspicious activity with your account, but before we go any further, we need to verify it's you. Please read me the code that we just sent you. So what's happening is, in this case, an attacker has attempted to log into your online banking portal using your name and password for however they stole your password. They got their hands on it, and now they're trying to log in. But they need that multi-factor authentication, so they call you and they pretend to be the bank, right? And so what they know is that they attempted to log in, and that login attempt resulted in a passcode getting sent to your phone. So now they're going to call you and use a made-up story to try to get you to give them that code so that they can complete the login. And then, hopefully that makes sense to everybody. And then at the bottom there, SIM card swaps. If you ever see your phone say no service or provide you an access code and you weren't anticipating that, be very worried. Okay, inside your phone is what's known as a SIM card, and that SIM card is an identifier unique to your phone. And there are SIM card swap attacks that result in you getting that no service message, and what that probably means is somebody is spoofing a SIM card. So be wary of that message. A couple of other things, password guessing. You know, a lot of MFA codes are very short. 4 characters is only 10,000 possible guesses, which to a hacker is very, very few. Hacking mobile devices. If you have a mobile device that's been compromised and you're getting multi-factor authentication to your phone, I don't care if you need multi-factor authentication, because if I'm logging every keystroke, well then by gosh, I'm going to catch that, and or I'm seeing what's on your screen, well then I'm going to see that number and I'm going to be able to use it against you. There are some particular attacks out there with names like Necro Browser that actually sit in the middle between you, your browser, and the web server somewhere off in the cloud, and tries to capture things like session IDs, which can be used to circumvent multi-factor authentication. And now that we're in the age of teleworking through pandemics, there are attacks evolving now where IT is, or somebody impersonating IT, is going to start calling people at home, asking them if they've got the critical new patch, and if they don't, they're going to tell you to open your browser and go to a certain web page to get that critical patch. Cross-boundary attacks. Again, we live in a highly highly interconnected computer system these days. We've got lots of internal departments within our organizations. We've got lots of segmented networks. These are all integrated entities. We've got all kinds of vendors where we're talking to, government and industry agencies that we need to report to or share data with. All of these result in a lot of possible cross-boundary attacks. The most textbook example of a cross-boundary attack is the Target breach from 2013, which began by not an attack against Target, but an attack against a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, or HVAC vendor against Target, which was much easier to breach than Target. Then using the breach of the HVAC vendor, they went into the Target vendor remote access portal, took advantage of a couple of technical problems there, and then commandeered the entire network and stole 40 million credit cards. Here's a simple little diagram of that, where we've got the target network, which was in and of itself pretty secure, except for that vendor portal that this HVAC vendor had credentialed access to. They used that to get in, then they used drop sites to exfiltrate the data to, and then a bunch of footpads to go and use those credit cards to buy things like gift cards. The drone wars. So drones are really fun and really popular. We're going to see them used for malicious purposes, not just for law enforcement and stuff, but also for hackers. Wi-Fi attacks. If you live or work in a multi-story office building, war flying against your Wi-Fi, high-res video, peering in the window behind me to see what's on my screen and what I'm typing, sensitive audio to listen to me talking while I'm giving somebody my credit card number over the phone. Drones can be used to track movements and habits and what your favorite things to do are. So if you spend your money at a certain place consistently, and we can figure that out from drone coverage, well, then when we hack your credit card, we're going to spend our money there as well. So it doesn't show up as a potential fraud alert. And then there are GPS controls on drones to try to keep them, from flying above army bases and things like that. But there are lots of tools out there for disabling GPS and overcoming these geofencing controls in order to trespass. We're going to see a lot more about the drone wars in the 2020s. And then deepfake audios. This is artificial intelligence aided deepfakes. I'm going to play just a couple seconds of this deepfake video there. Many of you may have seen this.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. So, for instance, they could have me say things like, Killmonger was right. Jordan Peele.
Okay, so
this is a dangerous time. Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from the internet. It's a time when we need to rely on trusted news sources.
So a very simple example by Jordan Peele of how to perform a deepfake. This is not difficult to do with the help of artificial intelligence and machine learning. There we see on the bottom of the screen a little headline from the Journal where fraudsters used artificial intelligence to mimic the CEO's voice to get someone in accounting to create a payable to a non-existent vendor. Expect to see more of these headlines. And it's not just for attackers doing this for profit, like in that headline there. There are going to be attacks against all sorts of institutions that we currently trust. So here we see some very recent headlines of nation-state attacks with Russia feeding disinformation about coronavirus, U.S. charging Huawei with stealing trade secrets, a Swiss organization there in the right that was not really a Swiss organization. It was actually run by the CIA and German intelligence that sold encryption tools to many of the United States enemies. Attacks on voting systems. These attacks are real. If you don't believe that voting systems were attacked in the 2016 election and they didn't have a big effect on the election, I'm here to tell you that you're wrong. We work with both state and county voting agencies, and they were attacked. They were attacked repeatedly. They were attacked across the country in 2016. Good news is a little better prepared in 2020. And then, there's just this whole cesspool of unvetted disinformation in media and social media. With the loss of local news that has a mediating effect on people's political views, we all end up in our own favorite political echo chambers listening to unfact-checked information that makes us feel good about our views, and this tide of anti-intellectualism. As a scientist, this is one I don't have a lot of patience for. We see a quote there from Mike Hughes, the flat earther who died in his homemade rocket crash in late February. I don't believe in science, period. He'd probably be alive right now if he did. And of course, it's not just become the purview of the Russians who love disinformation, but now there are PR firms out there that are selling disinformation as a service. You read the subtitle here. One firm promised to use, quote, every tool and take every advantage available in order to change reality according to our clients' wishes. That's going to be something you'll see a lot more of in the 2020s. And then lastly, we'll wrap up here with a little advice, the obsolescence of modern encryption. Now, I'm not going to go into technical details. Any IT folks on the phone this morning want to talk about this in more detail, happy to take this conversation offline. But most of us have heard about quantum computers. Quantum computers are incredibly powerful, or will be when the engineering challenges are overcome. And the reason they're going to be so incredibly powerful is that in traditional computing, a bit has one of two values. It's either 0 or 1, and that's it. It's binary. There are no other choices. But in a quantum computer, bits become what are known as qubits, and they can take on what's called a superposition of both values, both 0 and 1. As a result of this computing breakthrough, quantum computers could be uncrackable. So there could be quantum encryption that will never be able to be broken. And that's from mathematical first principles. But and they're also great for solving problems like medical research. So again, building models of viruses is something that the world's biggest supercomputers are working on right now. A quantum computer could reduce, a functional quantum computer could reduce the time required to do that tremendously. Unfortunately, quantum computers with qubit processing capabilities can also render modern encryption algorithms obsolete, perform trillions of cracking operations per millisecond in a way that would make modern encryption essentially useless. Now, there are still a lot of engineering challenges that face quantum computing, and it may be that we will not see quantum computing in the 2020s. It remains to be seen. There are two major problems facing engineers trying to build quantum computers. One is called decoherence, and that is impacts on the environment, such as vibrations, temperature fluctuations, magnetic fields. Even observing the quantum interactions can destroy the qubit quantities of quantum computers and render them into traditional bits, in which cases they're not strong computers anymore, they're weak computers. Additionally, error handling is difficult in quantum computers. When a bit can only have one of two values, 0 or 1, the math is really, really simple. In binary math, here's your binary math primer. 0 plus 0 equals 0. 1 plus 1 equals 0. 0 plus 1 equals 1, and 1 plus 0 equals 1. There are only two possible outcomes for each addition operation in binary. It's either 0 or 1. So we can string a bunch of bits together, and it's very, very easy to perform checksumming or parity. And if we lose one of those bits, it's super easy to back calculate it. If I have a string of bits that's 1 and 0, and I have a parity bit that's 1, and one of those first two bits disappear, I can back calculate the one that got lost in transmission or lost in storage, and that's very easy to do because all I have to do is look at the other one that's left and decide what number adds up to my parity bit, and I'm done. So I know that's a little bit confusing, but if you want a little more information on that offline, don't hesitate to holler and we can talk about it. That's how parity and checking works in modern binary computers. When a bit is no longer a bit, but it is a qubit, then this parity or checksumming no longer works. And so how to control errors in quantum computers is a huge engineering challenge. So as soon as those two engineering challenges have been overcome, we may see quantum computers. So that's it. There's our looking into the future there for 2020s. Just to wrap up here, a couple of key pieces of advice for safe computing. First and foremost, passwords. Any of you who've sat in my quarterly webinars before have probably heard me harp about passwords. You must use strong passwords, and there is no such thing as a short password that is strong. Length is the most important criterion for a strong password. Use passphrases, but you also need to make a couple substitutions because passphrases, we hackers have started to include passphrases in our dictionaries. And then store your passwords securely. Store them in RoboForm or KeyPass or one of those password databases, or at least put a password on the Excel file that you're using to store your passwords. Microsoft's encryption routine for current versions of Excel is actually quite strong. And wherever possible, put up with the hassle of multi-factor authentication, Google Authenticator, Duo, RSA, you name it. Put up with the hassle. It's worth it. Multi-factor authentication stymies many attacks. When it comes to email, just don't use email for sensitive information if you can help it. Maybe use sensitive message platforms, encrypted message platforms like Slack or WhatsApp. If you have to use email, password protect those attachments that have sensitive information. If you have to use email and you send or receive emails with sensitive information, then delete them and empty your trash can when you're done. Use inbound mail filter tools to examine attachments and links to avoid those phishing attacks that have malicious links or attachments associated with them. And if you got to use email, consider using a good email encryption routine, such as PGP, which stands for Pretty Good Privacy, or Zix Mail, a third-party mail hosting service that you can use. All those are good compensating solutions for email. When you're browsing, be a safe browser. Pay attention to the link that you are clicking on, okay? In our first example there, https://www.chase.com, that's Chase Bank. But www.chase.bank.com is not Chase Bank. www.chase.com is Chase Bank. www.chase.net is not Chase Bank. Pay attention to the last three letters, the .com, the .org, the .net, and the word that immediately precedes that .com, .org, or .net, and make sure they are what you think they are or should be. Be sure and log out when you're done. Be sure and secure your browser. Limit scripts. Use things like privacy badges that restrict ads. Use a proxy or a VPN like Foxy Proxy. These are all great tools to secure your browsing. Limit sharing and post anonymously. So again, things like Yelp and Google review scams that we talk about. If you have to post something, post it anonymously. And then be suspicious of all pop-ups and dialog boxes, like the example that we see right here. This is a little pop-up that's used with a malicious online banking attack toolkit that just pops up and says, "Oh, your certificate is got a problem. We need you to validate it. Please click yes." Be wary of pop-ups. And when it comes to mobile devices, be an aware mobile device user. Disable or use privacy screens on webcams when not in use. Make sure that your phone, speaker, TV is not activated when discussing sensitive information. You know, leery and serious sound a lot like Siri. For anybody who uses an iPhone and has Siri enabled, you've probably run into that before, where all of a sudden Siri perks up because she thought she heard her name called. Be wary of applications that you download from storefronts. Make sure you're at the App Store or Google Play. Beware of QR badges, that's those little hieroglyphic type badges. And again, inspect all links before clicking. Here we see a headline from just a couple days ago about ransomware sites that target Android users, a new piece of Android malware. And I know this sounds like it really defeats the purpose of your phone in the first place, but if you can turn off your location services, Bluetooth and Wi-Fi when not in use, your phone is a much more secure device than it was with those things enabled. Now, of course, if you want to use mapping to get somewhere, you're probably going to need your location services. And if you want to tie into your wireless earbuds, you're probably going to want Bluetooth and so forth. But these things all weaken the security of your mobile device. And as you've heard me say before, don't use Wi-Fi unless it's a fully trusted Wi-Fi. Otherwise, stick to the LTE network. Few parting shots here for telework security considerations. First of all, understand your company's remote working policies and procedures. If they have them, familiarize yourself with them. Think about a secure workspace at home where neighbors can't look through your windows and everybody else there can't hear you. Consider banning phones from sensitive conversations. Consider having different computers and tablets and phones for different uses. When I'm at home, I have a computer that I use for news, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. And I have another one that never goes to those sites, that's used strictly for work access, online banking, access to my retirement fund, and that sort of thing. If you've got Wi-Fi at home, make sure you're using the most current encryption routine, which is WPA3. WPA2 is still pretty good, but don't use WEP or WPA1. And then use a VPN for communications with your office. If your company doesn't provide that, there are third-party VPN services out there you can use. So that's it. We'll wrap up here just a moment late. Thank you all for your time and attention. Clearly, cybersecurity concerns will evolve in the 2020s. Attacks are going to become more targeted. They're going to become more sophisticated, and they're going to continue to come up with new ideas faster than I can document them. Practice safe computing habits. We just went over a bunch of those. And while we're all stuck in isolation here, it's a good time for all of us to remember to be extra nice to each other. You know, thank a first responder or a healthcare worker at every chance you get. Help people who are having trouble coping. You know, a lot of older folks who are most susceptible to the effects of this pandemic may not be comfortable ordering groceries online. Maybe you could provide some advice, or maybe do an order for them. And of course, let's be patient with our family and loved ones as we all sit huddled together. I actually used this morning's meeting as my excuse to get out of home for a moment. I'm here at the office. I'm the only person in our office today, in this office, but we're spending a lot of time with family and our loved ones. Let's be patient. We're going to have weeks and weeks of time to get on each other's nerves. Let's remind ourselves that we're all in this together. So that's it. That's all I had for you this morning. Any questions or comments at this time? Okay, well, if there are no other questions, then thanks again for your time, and good luck remaining productive through the pandemic. And I know that's a lot of information in a 1 hour period. If any other questions or comments come up, don't hesitate to reach out. I should have my password here. I don't have my email address here, but you can reach me at dtrepp, D-T-R-E-P-P, at bpmcpa.com. And then just for takeaway, a couple recommended reading sites here that you can go look at. And of course, our marketing team will post this slide deck on the BPM website, so you can go get to these links in the future. BPM has put together a good little page with some resources for COVID-19 attacks. NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, has a document on a guide to telework and remote access. For those of you not familiar, Bloomberg's cybersecurity page is a great semi to non-technical source of information on cybersecurity. Krebs on Security. Krebs is a blogger who has wonderful write-ups on cybersecurity attacks. If you're interested in social engineering, The Art of Deception by Kevin Mitnick is a wonderful book that I'm sure you can get from Amazon. And for those of you who don't believe me about password length being the most important criteria, I invite you to visit the Microsoft TechNet, and you can go through the mathematics of password length and why it is so important. And if you read that article and have any questions about it, don't hesitate to holler. We can go through it in all the gory mathematical detail you desire. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Hey, David.
Yes, sir.
There was one question that says, what is the best SW to use to protect PC and mobile?
So that would, I'm assuming, I'm sorry, I don't see that question here on my screen. I'm assuming that would be best antivirus software, probably. And, you know, my personal favorite antivirus software is undergoing some changes right now. Symantec Desktop Security. Symantec just broke up their company, and I'm not sure what the future of it is going to be. But right now, Symantec's endpoint security software is excellent. It really stops us in our tracks in a lot of cases when we attack. Also, McAfee antivirus is a very strong toolkit. There are a number of them out there actually that are pretty darn good. Yeah, I try to be a little bit vendor agnostic. You know, Trend Micro Security Agent is also really powerful. We find that stops a lot of our attacks. So there's 3 to choose from: Trend Micro, McAfee, and Symantec. Okay, any other questions or comments?
I think that's all I see.
Right. All right, so again, thanks everybody, and we will get this posted on the BPM website, so you can go grab a PDF copy of this for your reference. Thanks all, and have a great day.